Hello again, and welcome back to Sisters in Scripture. Today we are going to look at the second half of that remarkable pairing of Ruth and Naomi. So I hope you've been enjoying the story itself and the stories you share with one another. It lends itself to all kinds of heartfelt sharing. I think we tend to love this book for the story itself and the women in it, but also because it's a book about relationships. And as women, we understand that relationships are so important. They are at the heart of all that matters. What's kind of ironic about all this is that this relationship, which is given to us as the perfect example of love. Not only that, perfect example of covenant love. And the dynamic is that of a daughter-in-law and a mother-in-law. That relationship is not automatically an easy one, far from idyllic or trouble-free. In fact, sad to say, it's often a joke. It's the mainstay of comedy. Okay, for example, why were Adam and Eve the happiest couple on earth? Because they neither one had a mother-in-law. Okay, it's terrible. I get it. You can exchange mother-in-law jokes if you want in your small group. The point is that it is into this most unlikely of scenarios that we go to experience what the best of relationship can be. And how does this kind of happen? We don't know the backstory. We know that Ruth has been in the sphere of Naomi for 10 years before the story picks up. Naomi, Naomi's two sons, and the other daughter-in-law are part of that world. And there is something about that exposure that leads Ruth to throw in her lot with Naomi. So it behooves us to take a look at some close clues within the text about Naomi. Naomi knits both prayer and references to God throughout the book. We have, for example, at the beginning, when Ruth first hears about the change in circumstances there in Bethlehem. For she had heard in the country of Moab that the Lord had considered his people and had given them food. So she attributes this change to the actions of the God of Israel. Just a few lines later, when she's preparing to leave and then they get to the point of parting with her daughter-in-laws, she says this: "Go back, each of you, to your mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant that you may find security, each of you, in the house of your husband." So she invokes God's blessing upon these young women and bids them return. Now we know, of course, the story takes a dramatic turn when Ruth decides to stay. And even though she had attributed to God the blessing, she also attributes to the actions of God calamity. When she is met by the women of Jerusalem, they ask, "Is this Naomi?" Enough time or hard circumstances have passed that they are not sure. And she says to them, "Call me no longer Naomi," which the footnotes tell us means pleasant. "Call me Mara," meaning bitter. "For the Almighty has dealt bitterly with me. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi when the Lord has dealt harshly with me and the Almighty has brought calamity upon me?" So even in hardship, hardship or blessing. She sees all of this as the fabric of life, all dependent upon God. And Ruth is soon blessed again. Boaz has heard of her and of her relationship with Naomi. And he says to her, "May the Lord reward you for your deeds, and may you have a full reward from the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come for refuge." So when Ruth decides to return with Naomi, the sphere grows larger, and she discovers that it isn't only Naomi. She isn't unique in seeing the God of Israel this way, the source of blessing, the source of all that is. There are others. In fact, there is a whole community. Later at the wedding, it reads, "Then all the people who were at the gate, along with the elders, said, 'We are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your house like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the house of Israel. May you produce children and bestow a name in Bethlehem. And through the children that the Lord will give you by this young woman, may your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah.'" And then later, specifically to Naomi, the women said to Naomi, "Blessed be the Lord, who has not left you this day without next of kin, and may his name be renowned in Israel. He shall be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you, who is more to you than 7 sons, has borne him." On the occasion of Obed's birth. So what Ruth encounters here is a whole community of people who share in this relationship with the Lord of God of Israel. They probably aren't aware of what this seems like to her, of what they say or do or how they decide. But to an outsider, she notices. I think it begs the question, is there anything about our own speech, habits, ways of being that would alert others to our belief in God as well? This relationship between the two women is remarkably unselfish. It reminds me of another daughter-in-law, mother-in-law relationship that was no joke. It was a real and very good thing. I was working in a parish once where there was a woman who had 9 children. And the youngest was a son, and he was kind of a little afterthought. So that went strung out over many years. She'd already had many grandchildren. At any rate, her youngest son, he was a sweetheart. They got married there in the church, and he had chosen a wonderful young lady for his bride. And about 2 years later, she became pregnant. And I should back up, but this friend of mine, even though she had had 9 children, she had never witnessed a birth. Never. She was of a generation, much like my own mother, where women went to the hospital and they were put under, and then when they woke up, there was a baby. And so that was her experience. And once her daughter-in-law became pregnant, she told her mother-in-law, "I want you there in the room with me when this baby is born." To hear her tell the story, how miraculous, how moving, how meaningful this was for her. It was truly a case of gratitude begetting gratitude, of generosity begetting generosity. I mean, it's really a Ruth Naomi story, don't you think? Now, I don't know if you've had the opportunity in your story sharing to maybe even write a midrash or two. But to close, I'd like to share with you a midrash that was written one time. This was a few years back by a woman in California named Vicky. After Ruth's week confinement from the birth, it was the evening before the baby's bris, where he would receive his name and be circumcised. And the young women had come to Ruth's tent to celebrate with her. When they entered, they saw Mara sitting in the tent. They were a little surprised. The mother-in-law was not usually included in this customary celebration. But Ruth rose to greet her guests. She put the babe in one of the woman's arms, and then she busied herself pouring wine from a skin for everyone. Mara called out to her, "Do not dilute that wine with too much water. This is going to be a real party." And this was met with laughter and merriment. The ladies enjoyed the wine and some special foods that Mara had been preparing since the baby's birth. This was only a portion of what would be served on the morrow for the bris. The ladies passed the baby around, each enjoying the smell of a newborn, along with the food and the wine and the fellowship. Everyone was laughing, feeling good, and having a wonderful time when Mara stood and called for their attention. She told them that now she was going to be called Naomi once again. Mara was someone of the past. Her life was once again pleasant, more than pleasant. She said that God had blessed her with a wonderful daughter-in-law and a beautiful baby boy and happiness in her old age. She broke down at the end of her speech, ending by tearfully thanking Ruth with all her heart. Ruth rose from the rug, hugged Naomi, and whispered in her ear. There wasn't a dry eye in the tent. Then Ruth walked to the middle of the group and said they were going to stray from tradition. The baby's name was normally kept a secret for the first 8 days of his life, but she was going to ask all the women here to share what they thought of a name for her baby boy. Well, they started out tossing out ideas. They discussed the ancients, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Judah, Perez. They discussed variations of Lot and Joseph and Moses and Noah. They even discussed names they'd heard from visitors who had come from other lands, or asked Ruth of the names from Moab. What about the names of Naomi's 2 sons? They talked and laughed, shared stories that had been handed down to them. The moon traveled across the sky, and someone remarked that the east was growing light. Ruth whispered to her best friends to join her. Each holding a bit of the baby's blanket, Ruth and they carefully laid the baby into Naomi's arms. And Ruth told the group that the baby was Naomi's to name. Well, since it was the day of the bris, Naomi could tell the gathering the name she would like. First, she swore them to secrecy until after the circumcision was completed. She raised the baby up close to her face and told them the name she was choosing was because she had had a vision. This child would be a holy man, perhaps a leader, a judge, a prophet, or priest. His name meant servant worshiper. His name was Obed. Obed became the next in the lineage of the greats, and in 42 generations to the Messiah. And that is how God blessed Ruth and Naomi for their faithfulness and loyalty to his covenant of love. Hate to see this story come to an end and our time in the Hebrew Scriptures, but we will pick up with another remarkable pairing as soon as we open the New Testament next time. Till then, God bless.